For centuries, humans have grappled with persistent questions, yet the elusive answers remain beyond our grasp. Our existence unfolds amidst a tapestry of paradoxes and rules, often shrouded in mystery and misunderstood due to our lack of curiosity. Why do we exist? How does the intricate process of existence unfold? It seems that the very structure of our being is preordained by the paradox of knowledge. The paradox posits that knowing everything eliminates the possibility of comprehending what it means not to know. To navigate this ignorance and ensure survival, we must selectively forget certain aspects of our vast knowledge. Einstein's twin paradox serves as a testament to the peculiar nature of time. As we accelerate, time decelerates, hinting that complete rest propels time into infinite speed. At the brink of infinity, comprehensive knowledge beckons. In the practical realm, our existence is a perpetual dance in the present, and we shape our own temporal and spatial dimensions through the choices woven into the fabric of our lives. These intricate processes form the bedrock of our human existence, governed by 5 fundamental laws of the universe applicable to all that is. Together, we will embark on a journey to unravel the identities and natures of these laws. You are one.
Hello, welcome to the new episode of the You Are One series, where we are all together and helping each other to think more consciously and experience life as it really is. Today we tackled a very interesting topic which I think is not explained in Bulgaria, especially on YouTube. The 5 laws of existence, Ivo. What do you have to say about this?
The 5 laws of existence. This is the principle of existence at all. This is the pattern by which the world is created, through which the world exists, and the meaning of existence itself.
It is very important, let's just say. This applies to everyone. These laws are universal for each one of us, no exceptions.
Universal for the entire universe.
Before we go on, let's just add, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the videos every week. There's a bell there to pop up notifications because YouTube often doesn't send. Also, down in the description, we'll leave everything you need if you want to pick up any of the books, if you want to enroll in the academy. Everything will be in the description described in detail. You exist and this is unchangeable is the first law.
The idea here is to realize the eternity of existence itself. That is, once we are manifested, once we exist in a given pattern that we have chosen to manifest, this does not change from then on, but the fact of existence itself does not change. And actually, the 5th law says that everything is changeable. The idea is that the fact of existence does not change. And this model of awareness of things is very interesting here. You exist, and first we need to understand what the pattern of that existence is. If we are all one unified energy that is unified as a whole, we, in order to exist, need to sort of separate from that unified energy. It is like water and a drop of water. In order to have a separation of the drop of water, we, in some way, that drop of water, need to isolate it from the total amount of water that we have in, say, an ocean.
If we don't isolate ourselves, don't we exist?
No, we exist on the same principle, but we are inside the whole.
And we cannot understand that we are neither the drop nor the water.
That is, it is necessary to separate. Kind of if, say, everything is the same frequency, how do we know that we are that frequency? In other words, if we are only light and there is no darkness, will we know that we are light? It is necessary to have a basis for comparison. Otherwise, there would be no such basis of comparison, and we would take the light for granted, that it just is. And the idea here is that for a pattern to exist, it needs to be made up of 2 polarities.
Well, if you exist and it is unchanging, does that mean that existence itself is unchanging, but every single thing in our world while we live changes?
Absolutely right. Existence itself as existence, as a fact of existence, is immutable. That is, we will always exist.
No matter in what form?
Exactly, always. It doesn't matter what form, it doesn't matter which planet, which place, even which end of the universe we are. Once we exist, we always exist. As here, there is an essential point. According to our choice, we have the right to choose where to exist, exactly what to explore, exactly how to explore, a given limitation that we talked about. The idea here is that we are one common energy, and in that total energy, we isolate a part of the energy that is a certain amount of information, and we study that certain amount of information and how it interacts with other constraints, with another amount of information.
Okay, how can we learn to use this amount of information once we are aware of it already? Let's just say we didn't know that before. We already understand. We exist. We are energy. This is unchanging. How do we use it?
Well, first of all, let's realize that our task is, after we exist in a limitation, our mission, our task to live at all, to exist, to be manifested, is to constantly slowly expand.
The balloon.
The balloon or the constraint we are in.
Why do you call it a constraint?
Because it limits from all information a certain amount.
A certain...
Range,
Yes, a certain range?
and this certain range is strictly fixed. In a moment, though, the next moment, because it's a stretched space-time, the next moment we're putting in a little more, a little more, a little more, and we're constantly expanding the range of our knowledge, but this applies to a certain environment.
What do you mean by that?
The idea here is that we have made a choice to explore, let's say, what is it like to be a screwdriver? I give this as an example so that our viewers understand that the screwdriver is also a thinking structure. All is mind, the world is mental. If you are a screwdriver, what is your mission? What do you need to explore?
You are a tool. They can use you to screw or unscrew all kinds of things.
The corresponding screws, videos, bolts, etc. That is, in the world of the screwdriver, will coal appear, for example,
Most likely not.
or will a tree appear? Only if it has to be screwed somewhere.
That is, this also applies to us.
Absolutely the same applies to ourselves. If we are manifested to explore a certain state, will we be manifested something different?
That is, where we have focused our attention. In other words, we will not notice those parts of the world that are not synchronized with our attention.
Absolutely true. This is our choice.
Simply put, if I'm interested in music, things won't appear, let's say about space, about becoming an astronaut.
Nor will you go to become
An engineer.
an engineer. Or take your accordion to the construction site for the bricks to build themselves.
Absolutely. That is, the most important thing from the first law of creation is that we must realize that we always exist. That's it.
However, in two polarities, and one flows into the other, always. Why? Isn't the energy the same? And since the energy is the same, let's admit the version. In one direction, we are always devoted to interaction with the environment. At the same time, if we reverse the direction at the border itself,
We are uncommitted.
but at the border itself, we are not committed to the environment. We are a species separate from the environment. And now look what happens. We are the same energy whose direction is devotion to the middle, but at the border, we are turned upside down. In this way, we separate ourselves from the environment itself, become individual and unique, for the range of our expansion as spheres of information is strictly individual, according to the choices we have made, the selection for the research we are looking for. The point of our existence is to explore the very limitation in its interaction with others or with environment. And here is the interesting point. We both study our interaction with others, and at the same time, our border is turned towards ourselves.
Okay, so where does this whole thing go? I have to take care of myself first, and then I'll take care of everyone else if I'm okay. Because some people say, I must enter my inner world first, be at peace with myself so that I can help and give myself to others.
And now the question is interesting. What does inner world mean? Inner world means inside the sphere or outside the sphere? Inside the limitation, I already am, or outside the limitation, I am.
Some people accept the inner world, let's say, when they feel some inner voice, intuition, something is told to them which they ask.
And where does this information come from?
From this same energy potential.
From this same source, from this same energy potential. Is he inside you or outside you?
I would say that it is both within you and outside of you.
And now here we come to the most important part that you just mentioned. We are all that is. And we have confined ourselves to a space so that we can explore that space as it interacts with the rest of all, which is. And then we come to I am, and all that am not. But it also exists, and our task to live, to experience, is the exploration of this I am with the rest, which is again me, but which I have not yet focused on being me.
Yes, and not just being me and that's it, because most people stop at I am.
And here's the interesting point. If you focus and stay on this boundary with an inward direction,
what happens then?
will there be an interaction? Okay, can there be a study of interactions without interaction?
No.
Then our only chance to interact, to explore interaction itself, is by turning outward, realizing that we have put a boundary through which to explore this outside.
That is for all the people, in my opinion, who take this border as something bad. In my opinion, what we can take as the biggest lesson is to take this border as a guide, as something that gives us direction. Because otherwise, we set ourselves up and don't want to get out of it. And if we accept it as if it were the bridge between what separates us from what we are now and what we can become, and if we use every path as a ladder, as a helper, can we take it that way?
Yes. I would even add that, in fact, if we assume that these are our filters with which we are filtered from the environment, the filters help us to adapt more easily to the environment itself.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
And each subsequent filter, as you explained it, is the step towards ever better adaptation to the environment. And in practice this way, however, we change and evolve. And we are tasked every day with getting to know the next filter and the next.
We humans know about these filters. We use them every day, but most of us blame them and hate them. We think they are a bad thing instead of just looking at them as our helpers, because we think that we need something other than these filters to go down this path. And they are the same filters.
And that is the paradox.
This is a huge paradox. It's like a screwdriver or a pen. It's either a killer or a helper.
and it depends on what you accept.
That is, the filter in itself, sorry to interrupt you, but to conclude, it is a means.
A tool.
Okay, a tool.
A tool with which we adapt better to the environment. And we must love our filters and constantly upgrade them to be the ladder of our success.
Great! That was the first law of the 5 laws of existence. You exist, and that is unchangeable. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new episodes of You Are One. Bow and thank you for being with us, and we sincerely hope you are together because we are all together for our one. Everything exists in the simultaneity of the here and now. Simultaneity is the second law of existence that we will be looking at today. If you haven't watched the first one, go back before watching this video because things will become clearer to you. Welcome everyone to another episode of You Are One. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to join us all, to all seekers and those ready to explore the world of the unknown. Today, we are talking about the here and now, about whether there really is a past and a future. Are we living in one big illusion? And where is our place in all this? Welcome, Ivo.
Hello. There is a very interesting moment in the presentation of the here and now. When we talk about the here and now, in all the esoteric books, in all the spiritual practices, they talk about the here and now. But no one explains why exactly we are talking about the here and now. Why don't we talk about the past, the future, the experiences, etc.? The moment is always here and now, and everything happens here and now, but no one tells you why. And now, here is very briefly the idea of explaining what here and now means. A paradox, Einstein's paradox of the twins, tells us that the faster we move, the slower time passes for us. To explain this phenomenon of time, Einstein tells a tale about 2 twins. 2 twins who live on Earth, but one gets on a starship that flies at a speed close to the speed of light. And because he is moving very fast, time will pass more slowly for him than for this twin who is on Earth. And when the twin traveled for a year in the starship, during that time on Earth, how did time flow? Faster. Therefore, for the twin who is on Earth, more years have passed. And when the twin returns after a year of his journey, he will be about 9 years younger than his brother. This is very well reflected in the movie Interstellar. The difference in space-time is very well shown. But where does this difference come from? Let's explain it very briefly. So, the faster we move, the slower time passes for us. And now we allow the reverse version. If we move more slowly, how will time flow? What if we move even more slowly?
Even faster.
And if we are at complete rest?
Time will tend to infinity.
And as time tends to infinity at this point?
Time tends to infinity, but is time infinite?
Time is not infinite, and it tends to infinity as flow, as speed. And in this situation, a small paradox occurs. So, at this point where we have complete rest, time, as it approaches infinity, is running so fast that what happened 3 million years ago, when is it actually happening?
Here and now.
Happening now in this moment. And what will happen in 3 million years?
Again in this moment.
Well, then it means that when we are at complete rest, because of the infinitely fast passage of time, everything happens when?
In the present.
In the present now. And where exactly is it happening? Well, here, only at this point, which is completely at rest. If the dot was moving,
It is no longer here and now.
it's not here anymore. It's going to be somewhere else. And it won't be now, but at a different time. Because the faster we move, the slower time passes for us. And what is that point? Well, that's all the potential. Why? Because in that point of complete rest, because in an instant this point will have all the information. Everything happens to her in this moment now.
And she has the full knowledge.
The full capacity of information.
Okay, but how do we get to that point?
That point is the idea of our manifestation, because precisely at this point, the paradox appears. If I know everything, can I know a state of ignorance? If I know everything, can I experience a state of ignorance?
And is it possible for me to know everything?
Well, right. If time runs at infinite speed and I'm completely still, what happens? Full knowledge is within me. However, if full knowledge is within me, can I experience any states of ignorance?
Well, no. And that's why I go to experience them, and I no longer have this complete knowledge.
But if I start to experience them, I'm already moving at a speed other than zero.
That is, I move at a speed other than that which tends to infinity.
Exactly. And then time passes?
Slower.
More slowly.
And it's already in the cycle.
And what then needs to be shaped?
It is necessary to form an environment and limitations in which to stop in order to be able to explore this field of information, because otherwise I would be confused.
Correct. This field of ignorance, in order to explore it, you set a certain speed for yourself to move around the point of complete rest.
But the point of complete rest never moves away from there. She is always in this limitation.
And then we can expand
Infinitely.
to expand, but at the same time to explore different probabilities of that expansion. And what are the probabilities of this extension? Infinite. Therefore, we have infinite variations of ignorance to explore given all the information about it.
That is, the I have nothing to do excuse is comical.
It is thoughtless. I always make sense. If I exist, it means that I have already chosen what to explore.
Is this the answer to everything exists for a reason, and I am here with a specific mission and reason?
Yes, my mission is to explore the limitation that I myself have chosen to be.
Or for that matter, I'm not here by accident, as I said.
Could it be a coincidence if I chose it?
Yes, these are one of the great paradoxes of the whole thing.
But here is also the meaning of our existence. In effect, in that we emerge from full potential and information and limit ourselves to no ignorance, we are both the full potential and the limitation we have created.
And aren't we the potential, the limitation, and the probabilities?
And now here, you very precisely, very correctly pointed out, because in practice we are the limitation that we have created. By itself, however, it is meaningless.
Yes.
It only makes sense if there are other constraints that we have created to interact with, because a constraint becomes meaningless if you can't interact with other constraints. Imagine a dark space, and you are sitting inside the dark space, and you have limited yourself. Well, and?
Nothing.
Nothing? The only point of our having limited ourselves in this potential is that there are other limitations with which to interact with each other, and then we can explore what that limitation or this ignorance would rule among other such ignorances.
And this all happens in ordered moments from here and now.
Are the ordered moments of the here and now, actually.
Isn't that the linear structure we call past, present, and future?
Yes. And actually, where is the interesting point? Every thought of ours, the moment it enters the so-called vacuum of nothingness, back in 2011, Per Delsing's team at the Chalmers Institute Royal Swedish Academy discovered that every high-frequency pulse in nothingness causes a pair of photons to appear. In this, one photon spins in one direction and the other photon spins in the other direction. And if these two photons do not have some common direction perpendicular to their manifestation, they disappear back into nothingness. These are the so-called dreams. However, when they have momentum E, you have a choice. The pair of photons start spinning.
And it becomes a whirlwind, it becomes a vortex.
A double spiral. What does that remind you of?
of DNA.
DNA. And actually this double helix, which is the double helix of two polarities, if you think about it in more detail, one photon spins one way and the other spins the other way.
Yes.
So these are two
They are two opposites.
opposites or two polarities. But these two polarities, united by the general direction of our choices, give the DNA of our existence. In fact, this is how we come to the conclusion that by giving direction to two polarities that mutually self-destruct, in quotes, we create the world we choose to create.
That is, without two opposites, there is no world. There's no us.
Well, yes. If we are a drop of water in the sea, will we know that we are a drop of water? That's what we started with.
That is, the world can never be only good or only bad. It can never be only happy or only unhappy. It is always both. Only this, how we decide to react to the world around us, determines what it is.
That's right. And depending on the meaning we give to it, whether we use the pen as a weapon or a writing tool is entirely up to us. That is, again, from our choice.
That is here and now.
Which is always here and now, in terms of potential. That is, we live in an illusion. And now here is the thin moment. Hong Tang, Yale University, proves that when there is a pair of photons with different spins, that is, with different spins, they move apart. It receives a lateral force of light that stretches the pair of photons between them and pushes them in two different directions. This out-of-nowhere collision causes space-time itself to stretch, and the pair of photons continues to rotate, stretching the nothingness at a certain speed and expanding more the range of our exploration and our space-time. That is, each one of us making choices stretches an individual space-time in which he self-manifests and self-exists himself and his environment with which to interact. And then he begins to format filters within himself to adapt to the environment
That he has created.
that he has created and is willing to explore.
And part of these filters we call memories. We call them expectations. We call them, in this case, future and past. And we stretch them like this.
And thus we are constantly stretching this space-time.
And our big problem is that sometimes we prefer more given filters and memories. And that is why some people are said to live in the past. And actually, we are always now.
And we have always existed here and now. And this stretched space-time is the fruit of our choices. First, the cause of everything that happens to us is our choices.
Can we then conclude that the greatest power we have is that we can choose at any moment?
While being aware. The idea is to realize that we are the creators of our own reality. We are the ones who stretch space-time. And further, if we know that the circumference of that circle is the work we're going to do, and the diameter of that circle is our capabilities, the more opportunities, the more work.
Accordingly, the more work.
The more opportunities. And here is the essential point. Where should our research direction be if we want more possibilities?
Outside.
But this is also the direction of the source itself. It by itself stretches space-time, creates an illusory picture, an idea of the existing, in which we interact with the reflections that we ourselves have created in our image and likeness. But otherwise, everything is here and now.
And our choice, combined with our awareness of the here and now, gives us one of our most memorable experiences.
Called life.
All is mind, the world is mental, and everything is connected in unity. Everything that is one, and everyone contains everything that is. Today we will look at the third law of existence, which is one of the most important.
The fact that we are united answers so many questions. It responds to the fact that we know everything about everyone. And here comes the question. how do we both know it and at the same time claim that we don't know it? By focusing on the limitation that we are, we seem to forget that we originate from the potential that all information has. And in fact, this forgetfulness of ours is the desire to look individual and unique in our own eyes. But we anyway stretch individual space-time, individual energy, and individual meaning, stake in our limitation what exactly to explore. I.e., we can't help but be individual and unique.
I just want to add something here. Since you explain it from a physicist's point of view, I would explain it very simply. Masses of people strive to be perfect. They look for the perfect ideal, a person or an idol, to be perfect, and they follow it. They think that certain people are perfect. And for me, the simplest explanation is the following: because they say that no one is perfect. Right? Not so for me. Each of us is perfect in our imperfection. And since there is no one else like us, each one of us is individual and unique. Is there a chance? How can you compare yourself to someone when there is no one else like you in the entire universe? You know?
Yes.
And in that regard, you are perfect, because there is no other.
There is no other like you. You are unique, ideal, perfect, unrepeatable.
That's what I want to say. How is it possible to compare ourselves and look for perfection outside of ourselves when there never was and never will be another like us?
The unwillingness to realize that we are in unity, one is us. Ideal perfection would be achieved if we were all together for a common information field. Think it over. Together for a common information field, that is, each of us as our individuality and uniqueness, plus the grasses, plus the objects, plus everything that is around us, collected into a whole, represents all the information about the experienced ignorance, plus the potential of knowledge itself. There it is, perfect. If this perfect lacks even one unit, even one element, will it be ideal perfectionism, or will it be ideal perfectionism without one element?
Yes.
Well, it's just not the ideal perfectionism.
Ah, well, but there's no ideal perfectionism then.
Seen from whose point of view? From the point of view of limitation or from the point of view of potential? If we look at it from the perspective of potential, each one of us is individual and unique and is complementary to all others to be all that we are.
And if we look at it from the perspective of limitation?
If we look from the point of view of limitation, limitation experiences itself only if it exists in all that is, because otherwise it itself as limitation would be meaningless. And then the constraint would have to reason the same way. Me without all that is meaningless to exist, but I am the perfect complement so that all that is can be all that is, and then we ourselves will consider ourselves individual, unique and indeed perfect complements to all which is.
And actually, it's very important here, I think, to put in that a lot of people who watch the channel and write messages and emails how they think that, or they don't deserve to live to be a part of this life, or that according to them, they have no place, or that they are not important. To me, what you said proves that each and every one of us matters.
Everyone has a point to be here. Otherwise, they would not be manifested.
That is, If you think that you have not discovered your task at the moment, and therefore, you think that you should not exist, it means that you have not simply discovered your task.
Or your task is to strive for the discovery of your task. That is also a task. If you strive for the discovery of your task, this is also a task. And in fact, it makes sense from you, because through you all, that is, will understand how new tasks are discovered, even when you don't have any information about the task itself.
There's no meaningless elements and meaningless manifestations.
As well as there are no accidentally manifested, as well as no defective errors. I was a mistake of nature. Well, can I be a mistake and be manifested? Well, then there shouldn't be any point to my existence if I'm a mistake.
Okay, it's all mind. And what is the mind?
The mind is the potential through which we receive all information, and we always have access to that information. Another question is whether we will want to use it, or we will prefer to stick to our limitation, which may have some other defect here and there, but otherwise it is the perfect limitation.
Haha, well, if it was all about wishing, everyone would do it.
In fact, everyone does it. The idea is, potential constantly gives us dreams. Potential constantly throws intuition at us. Potential constantly meets us with elements that are our signposts, our reflections, to tell us what our task is. And what do we do all the time?
We reject them.
Oh God, that's nonsense.
Deja vu is the same way.
Intuition. I knew it would happen, but I did it differently. And what? At the end, we meet certain people, certain elements of all that is, which tells us what our next path is, our next task. And what do? We deny our entire environment. At the same time, we are fruit of this denial, and instead of being one is all, let's realize that we are sources. We have all the information, and in fact, we create everything around us to constantly remind ourselves of the meaning of our existence. That is, we explore ignorance itself, and this is the meaning of our manifestation, wherever it is, and starting to deny the environment.
In fact, this denial, we don't feel it immediately. It is the accumulation of denial that leads to catharsis for us. We will not get seriously ill from a single denial. But if we do it for 20 years...
So, you're so right. And now here we start talking etymology of denial. Deny, and al, hence, deny the act of doing, denial from what was said. Therefore, a piece of what we have promised ourselves has been denied. Therefore, a piece of what we have promised ourselves has been denied. And I refuse and refuse to take small pieces of the whole. But we want to be the whole. Well then, explore the whole. Explore the unknown. Explore from what you have so far. Once you explore, you are yourself. Go in the direction of all that is around me is the unexplored self. And then we have development, a way out. Then we also have oneness with all that is. The more we explore beyond ourselves, the more likely we are to be ourselves. Because we will reach the choices we have made ourselves more easily.
Otherwise, the task of understanding who we are becomes impossible.
Exactly. And Einstein himself said it. one solution to one problem is solved.
Only by
By?
a different level from what it was created on.
Exactly. And for this reason, we should expand a little to solve our own problem. If we don't expand, can we solve our problem?
I apologize for wording it like that, but it's stupid. How can we even think that the thing we've been doing right now, if we keep doing that thing, will lead to the solution of this problem?
Here, this is the biggest question, and that's what we call security. In fact, all is mind, the world is mental, but it means realizing that we are all potential and we construct ourselves and the environment on the basis that we are the whole. And at that moment, if you think about it, what does each element represent? A limitation of the whole, but it represents the whole itself, which has decided to limit itself.
That is, it is the whole.
Both the limitation and the whole, and the interaction between himself and the other limitations he has created. Hence, both the path and the source, and life itself as interaction.
And the power that complements and opposes them.
And whether we will complement or oppose them is the given meaning that we will put, whether a pen is a weapon or a writing instrument.
Depending entirely on our focus.
And our choice, exactly.
In the simultaneity of here and now.
That's it.
I hope things are starting to become more understandable, clearer. Ask your questions boldly without any hesitation. For those of you who are worried about writing them down with everyone, you can write them to my email youronesource@gmail.com. Don't worry, we read all the comments, and I try to answer as many as possible because we are all in this together. Don't forget it. Have a nice day, everyone, and until the next video. Today, we are going to look at the essence of the law of attraction, or the fourth law of existence, which just so happens to be better known in our world by now as the law of attraction. But it states, what you put out is what is reflected back. Every element of everything that is creates reflections in its own image and likeness, as the element itself is a reflection of the reflections it creates. Welcome to the new episode of You Are One. It might sound a bit complicated to you, but I'm sure after this episode is over, things will be very clear. What you put out is what you get back, so the question is, what do we put out?
The question is, what choice have we made? Quite specifically. According to our choice, we said that by looking at the previous laws of existence, we are stretching individual space-time. At one end, we accept that this individual space-time is future, at the other end it is past, and we are always acting through our choices in the here and now. In all this situation, in order to have existence, we also need to have elements around us to interact with in order to answer, why have we limited ourselves in this limitation? Why have we stretched this particular individual space-time?
Okay, but does that mean we can get the things we want this way? Even if we look at it from a slightly more micro perspective, i.e., if I, let's say, am very stuck with money, can I manifest myself by wishing, in this case, to receive money?
Here is the essential point of the wish. You can is the specific answer. In fact, what we wish for always happens to us. We assume a certain interaction with the environment, but we begin to deny the environment itself. And for this reason, what we supposedly assume, we deny.
And in this case, there are two versions. Either it is delayed until we get our choice and direction right, or it never comes.
It does not come if we remain closed in ourselves. Very true. However, if we wish for whatever it is, as you said, for an example, we want money. Great. But this money should be for our environment, through which we can decide the meaning of our existence. That is to solve the task. That is, if we demand to have money so that we can give it to the environment to experience the given task that we have set ourselves, we will always get it. A very important point is,
That is, we can say that certainly what we emit is what is reflected and we receive it, but more important is why. What is our intention is more important, and what is our direction?
what is the direction? That is the importance.
And even better, if we're honest enough with ourselves to admit that it's all about us, all about the inward direction, then we'd better not do it.
Well, yes, because in this way we close ourselves off.
Okay, but this is research. If I don't know what it is to explore the direction inward to find out, shouldn't I desire it to see it?
Okay, let's assume we're all inward facing.
Not all. The point is, if I've explored the opposite up until now, I've, for example, been totally committed to the outer direction, but I miss, let's say, the inward direction. Won't I not know what this is?
Right. And for this reason, you will always have both an outward direction and an inward direction. But here's the interesting part. And the inward direction, by presumption, you have it. At the very interaction with the environment inside you. That movement of energy called emotion will be reflected. Emotion, the energy that moves. Emotion. E as energy and motion as movement. That is, the energy that moves within you is a reflection of the interaction you have with the environment. And now, here is the thin moment. This emotion affects your interactions with the environment, and again, we have a vicious cycle, and one flows into the other, because if you are mad at the environment, you will deny it. If you are in harmony with the environment, you will accept it.
That is, when everyone around us is sad, angry, and furious, does it mean that we are like that?
Absolutely true. At this point, as we create an environment in our image and likeness, as sources of ourselves and the environment itself, we radiate ourselves as proton fields, even from the circulatory system of our own choices, which we will comment on in another episode of the series, You Are One. In effect, we project our choices into the space of potential, and an environment manifests that is actually an accurate reflection of our choices. If we have wished to be sad, the whole environment around us appears to be sad. And in relation to money, if we have wished the environment to have money, will we run out of money?
But how many of us wish the people around us had money, and how many of us wish only we ourselves had money?
Exactly. And here comes the so-called egocentrism. How many of us wish others were well?
And it's not just about the money, but in general, because
this is a global mindset.
it's like if you think what's best for the others, if you want the good to be on their behalf, then money will be the least thing that will get in your way at times.
In this way, however, a mental field is realized, and this is worth noting. We forming, let's say, a mental field. I think about myself, know yourself, divide and rule. I have goals, and so on. This is all individual thinking about ourselves. This is an inward direction. In this way, we isolate ourselves from the environment. And how then will we explore ourselves in our interaction with the environment if we are basically inward looking and environment denying? And this is a complete paradox.
Yes, that is, the inward direction or self-exploration is only half of it. That's the one side of the coin.
And the other one?
And most of us thought that that was it.
Exactly.
And it turns out to be just the half.
And besides that, we shouldn't forget, one flows into the other. That is, if the others are not there, we become meaningless. And then our existence, as one of the laws of existence, becomes meaningless. Because if we are alone in the dark space, what do we exist for? We become mindless. We exist to interact. Here is the most essential moment, the greatest beauty. And that paradox, right? Know thyself, or isolate with thyself, or separate to learn.
Well, then all the monks, all the priests, all the clerics in Tibet, for example, who go into seclusion for 2, 3, 5 years are completely with themselves. You cannot deny that they reach a very deep level of consciousness.
To a deep level of what? Consciousness? Or awareness?
Okay, or awareness.
No, they reach a deep level of isolation. Because in these 5 years, if they come down from Tibet to the city, will they be able to adapt to the environment they have created?
We have to ask them. Probably not.
And if they can't adapt, then where is their interaction? Isolated in Tibet, can they interact with their environment so that there is meaning to their lives, so to speak? Life is in interaction, in the flow of one into the other, in contact with others, in relationships with others.
I mean, even this version looks like to hell with all. I'm going to isolate myself and let the world heal itself, and I will look at myself again and again selfishly.
Well, this is a kind of egocentrism through which I delegate all the responsibility to the source that I am, without, however, being accountable for the limitation I am. I do not take responsibility for my own limitation, even though I have created it myself. The idea is really to realize that only interactions and relationships matter. And here again, I emphasize the interactions and relationships. That is, we should not wait for someone to give us something. We provide a reciprocal relationship. We give and take action. The interaction and relationship are formed based solely on our mutual exchange.
Yes. And again, we come to the fact that as much as we borrow, as much as we give, so much we will receive. And that's the thing that we, the people, think that what we have given, it will come back to us, but it is not so.
But is not what we gave. We are all one. The third principle, the third law of existence says, we are all one and in unity. We may give to the left and receive to the right. We can give above and receive from below. Does it matter where we get it from, if we get it either way? From the point of view of the source, from the point of view of the potential that we are, the result to get is important to us. It doesn't matter where, and we think that if I give a cup here, I must receive from the same cup.
That is, we must put these thoughts aside and accept the more global part. After all, the very idea that we receive the given cup or something from where we have given is also a limitation of our full potential.
This, on the one hand, is very correct, but that's the one side. And now we will develop it further. If we create our environment, why do we create it?
To explore ourselves, and what we do not know in ourselves through them.
That is, are they helpers or pests?
They are always helpers. The question is,
That is, we create the environment to help us, but we will deny it. And doesn't that sound paradoxical? A bit like that joke that is told in Interstellar Alliance? A little gossip to share? So the aliens come to Earth and say, well, there are a lot of hungry children here in China. Let's do something about it. But we have no money, say the Earthlings. Well, here in Africa there is no water. Let's do something so they have water. There is no money for that either, say the Earthlings. And here in South America, the favelas, let's fix them. Let them live cleaner, better. There is no money, say the Earthlings. And finally, the aliens come and say, look what, we understand this resource money is obviously very important to you Earthlings. So tell us what this resource money is. Explain it to us. We will go around the whole universe and we will give it to you, only for you to develop. And then the Earthlings answer, relax, we print the money ourselves. Indeed, this is the paradox of humanity. We ourselves create an environment in order to experience it together. The limitation we have chosen for ourselves, while at the same time denying the very thing we have chosen. And that's why this law of attraction is, in fact, not a law of attraction, but in practice it is a law of repulsion for Earthlings.
yes. Okay, but how should we formulate it so that we can use it in practice every day consciously, however? Because we, let's say, use it by presumption. But from now on, we want to use it consciously.
We just formulated it together with you. What did we say? We said that we create ourselves, and the meaning of our existence is to examine ourselves in a certain environment, to study a certain condition of ours, or our desire, a choice we have made. Therefore, we will thereby also create an environment in which to explore these states and choices.
Just like, let's try our desires. Let's find them to make it more interesting to us. Because otherwise, if we start from scratch with everything we have, we won't even last a year.
Well, then we must thank the environment that exists around us, because it is an exact reflection of our choices, our desires. And then can the environment manifest something other than our desires?
That is, through the environment we can check our desires if we feel confused. We can tell each other where to go at any moment.
And what to fix within ourselves, since the environment reflects our inner state and our inner choices.
Is that why Mahatma Gandhi says, if you want to find yourself, you must lose yourself in the service of others?
The idea is get to know others. Correct. By correcting yourself, changing yourself for the sake of others. And then things start to become clear.
Because others, being well already, will help you to get well.
Even if you are wrong, they will help you sort yourself out. So, first, we realize that our environment is not a pest. Second, that we ourselves create the environment on our behalf because of our own choices. And then, realizing all this, we begin to understand the law itself, a law of existence where what you put out is what you get. You cannot radiate gratitude and receive malice and hatred.
If you put it out, though, let's say, and to a certain group of people you're always kind, you're always devoted, but even so, let's say the first week or month, well, you don't get that back from those people. What is this sign then? There are people I know who say, well, I give everything for these people, I'm always nice, I'm always kind, I'm sick of it.
Okay, And here's the answer. I give everything for these people. When I comment on it, how did I give it? With the expectation of receiving or showing myself off, which in turn is the expectation of receiving, let's say, good treatment.
That is,
Did I give it with all my love and gratitude just because the environment exists? If I gave it this way, would I be looking for any feedback? Will I be looking for some expectation? What exactly do I get? No, I'm here to explore my interactions with the environment. I give my gratitude and that's it. I keep on giving and giving gratitude. And at one point I see everyone thanking me. And I'm like, aha, here's the connection.
yes.
If I spread hatred, malice, restrictions, what happens around me? The same. I begin to deny the environment because I myself am the menace who manifested this environment.
The questions here as a final conclusion are two. In my opinion, the first one is whether we will have the strength and the honesty to admit that we are these menaces. And the second one is, actually, that's the best thing, that even if we're the biggest menaces, we'll still have the chance to change. And the environment will continue to suggest it to us. And we will continue to have the chance to see it.
Exactly. But give it a thought. With whatever force I am willing to turn myself inward, if I turn outward, because it is the same energy, I will turn to the environment with the same force. Because it's still me, I can't use one force inward and the other force outward if I'm still me. I use the same power, and this is the so-called, again, given meaning. With the same power with which I work inward, the same power, if I turn it outward, becomes my greatest plus. That is where my greatest defects are my greatest opportunities if I change direction. And really, that's the beauty of change. Because by changing myself from an inward direction to an outward direction, I have the chance to stretch my frequency characteristics to infinity. I have the chance to expand my possibilities to infinity. I have the chance to be myself in the infinite variations of the potential that I am.
You are one. Kudos and thanks, Evo.
And I thank everyone who watches us.
Today we're going to look at the fifth and most important law of all, which states that everything changes except the first four laws. And often we humans subconsciously underestimate it because we don't allow ourselves to understand it. How come everything changes except the first four laws?
Basically, as a sentence, as a text, we accept that it is a law that explains how absolutely everything is subject to development, to change, except for the laws themselves. That is, it is accepted as a law that affirms the laws themselves. And the idea here of the fifth law is much deeper. Everything changes, except the four laws of creation, of existence, is an urge, a challenge to change. The idea here is to realize that if we do not change, we will not exist. No one thinks about it. If we sit in one place have no development, no unfolding of potential, no new research, no research on the subject of life. We keep ourselves at the limit of what we think is sufficient research for us. But then, in this sufficiency, we forget that our mission is the very study of the interaction between the self and the environment. And if this ceases, if this change is stopped, we ourselves become thoughtless of all that is and cease to exist.
The first 4 laws, do they change?
The first 4 laws are immutable. Why is this so? Well, because as facts, in order to exist, we have already specified in the 4 laws that in order to exist, these 4 laws are 100% valid. Otherwise, if any of them are broken or changed, it means that we ourselves will not exist. And it's that simple and basic. As long as one just tries and thinks about it. Whereas the 5th law is a little more global, a little deeper, a little more meaningful. And it is change. Because if you don't change, you cease to exist. But not as a cessation of existence itself, but as a cessation of the element which has given up on development.
Can you repeat it again? Change as?
Change as you develop. By sharing, interacting with the environment, because if you stop changing, you stop interacting with that environment, which is the purpose of your life. Of life in general. The meaning of life is in interaction. And if we stop changing, it means that we stop ourselves to a limitation that we have chosen. But then we become meaningless to the surrounding world, to everything that is. Because the meaning of being in everything that is to constantly seek new and new unfoldings of ourselves.
And there are people who say, for example, that people don't change. They are who they are. They put on masks. And in fact, it turns out that they have always been the same people. And they don't change. He who is like that is like that.
Here, an elementary rule is laid down here in this line, which is that if we set out to explore a constraint in its variance, we do not abandon the exploration of the constraint in its variance, even if that constraint is very short, i.e., we may only exist for 10 minutes of our own life. To explore exactly those 10 minutes, and then we will live for 10 minutes.
Yes, but for example, if we know a person for 20 years and continue to live with him but know all his tricks and all his nonsense, but nevertheless accept him as he is, we tell our friends, look now, he hasn't changed, he's still the same.
Right? Is he still the same? That's the thin line. And now let's see what the physics says about it. If we are at complete rest, we have all the knowledge. And then do we actually change?
If we are at complete rest, we do not change because we are not moving.
Actually, we have all the knowledge. And once we have all the knowledge, do we change?
That is the moment we forget. We already begin to change then.
The moment we start moving, we already have a change. And the faster we move, the slower time passes for us. We already commented on that. The idea here is that as soon as we move, there is always an existing change. If we go to stop in one place, we become thoughtless about the environment and everything that is, and we transmute. That is, we change the code.
How would you phrase the word transmutation in just a few sentences, because many won't understand?
Transmutation.
Sorry, for many people this sounds very complicated, and in some books, because I've read a lot of esoteric books, it's quite like that, from the forbidden words almost.
Mutation or transmutation?
Transmutation, basically.
Transmutation, because mutation is a deviation from the standard. Now let's ask ourselves the question, if you have 4 arms and legs, is that a deviation from the standard?
Who imposed the standard?
Who imposed the standard? And what is a standard? And what if the others are defective? And you show them the way with 4 hands and feet? Isn't this the new thing you need to follow? And Piotr Gariv, a scientist who studies this dependence, gives one suggestion: to study tadpoles at different frequency characteristics. At one frequency, frogs are born with 5 forelimbs. And we have an X-ray for those 5 front limbs. In the other frequency, they are born with 4 hind limbs and 2 forelimbs. And at the third frequency, they have no front limbs at all, only hind limbs. That is, depending on the frequency of the environment. So, we adapt our own filtrations and forms to best adapt to the environment. That is, if you have 4 limbs, is that a mutation? Or is it a development model?
And what's transmutation then?
Transmutation is a conscious mutation that leads to development. I'll give an example. If you realize that you can be at the same time both the flower and the tree and the bench and the man and the animal and the insect and the crawlers, and you can accept the version that every form is also your form, because it completes you to all which is.
With their frequencies.
With their frequencies, with their environments. Then, who is the complement of whom?
All are complements of all.
And every limitation creates a reflection in its own image and likeness. And the limitation itself is a reflection of the reflection it creates. In this situation, we complement each other with each of our reflections, and one flows into the other.
That is, one does not ignore the other, one does not destroy the other, one does not forget the other, one flows into the other.
Yes, it complements and flows into it.
But the other also complements the one so as not to divide it.
And then we are all one. And we are united, which is what the third law said. That is, in order for us to exist, we must realize that we are a whole, which whole has formed limitations that interact with each other. But every limitation has a direction outside itself, to reach the unfolding of the infinite all that is.
And the direction outside itself we call change.
And the direction outside oneself is development and change. Because in order to solve a given task, it is necessary to go to the next step, not to the level from which the task was caused. That is, whatever task we need to solve in our life, we need to step on the next step, to look from above, from a more global point of view. And when we look at this global perspective, let's decide how to solve this task. That was on the front step. And this way we always walk the steps of success. There is only one way of failure, and that is when we give up on what we are doing. Only then can we fail. We give up our existence. The rest of the time, all the steps of our development with a direction outside of ourselves are steps to success. And that's exactly what changes. It is what makes us exist. This is exactly the challenge, to look for ourselves in the infinite, all that is, for we ourselves are all that is. It is contained in us, and we are in it.
Change is inevitable, and everything changes except the first 4 laws. What a wonderful finish. Kudos, and thanks to everyone who was with us again. We must not stop looking. Change is inevitable, as we all learned today together. You are one. Thank you.